At 2:30 a.m. on October 25, 1944, Commander Richard O'Kane ordered the firing of the 24th and final torpedo from USS Tang, a Balao-class submarine operating in the Formosa Strait between Taiwan and mainland China. The target was a Japanese transport vessel, part of a convoy Tang had been decimating for the past 7 hours. 22 of Tang's previous 23 torpedoes had found their marks, sinking or damaging 13 enemy ships. This final torpedo would complete the most successful single patrol in American submarine history. The torpedo left the forward tube at 2:31 a.m., traveling at 46 knots toward a target 1,000 yards distant. The crew watched from the bridge as the weapon ran hot, straight, and normal for approximately 300 yards. Then it broached the surface, leaping from the water in what submariners called porpoising, a sign of mechanical failure. When it re-entered the water, the torpedo's gyroscope had malfunctioned, jamming the rudder in hard left position. The weapon began turning in a tight circle, curving back toward the submarine that had launched it. Bureau of Ordnance engineers in Washington had been warned about this exact failure mode for 2 years. Submarine commanders across the Pacific had filed reports about torpedoes that circled back toward their launching platforms. The Mark 14 torpedo's gyro stabilization system, designed to keep the weapon running straight after launch, had a documented failure rate of approximately 2%. In 24 recorded incidents, circular runs had occurred. In 22 cases, submarines had successfully evaded their own torpedoes. USS Tullabee and USS Tang would not be so fortunate. Standard submarine doctrine, written after earlier circular run incidents, specified emergency procedures. Crash dive immediately. Turn perpendicular to the torpedo's track. Go deep. Pray. But Tang was on the surface conducting a night attack with enemy destroyers closing from multiple directions. There was no time to dive, no room to maneuver. The crew on the bridge watched their own torpedo complete its circular track and strike Tang just forward of the after torpedo room, detonating 600 pounds of Torpex explosive against their own hull. In the next 18 minutes, Tang would sink into 180 feet of water, trapping 87 men in a flooding submarine. Only 13 would escape the control room, using Momsen lungs in the first and only combat use of that emergency breathing device. Only 9 would survive to reach the surface. Commander O'Kane, who would be awarded the Medal of Honor for Tang's final 2 patrols despite the disaster, would spend the final 9 months of the war as a prisoner in Japanese camps, watching American B-29s bomb the cities where he was held. Tang had been America's most lethal submarine, the standard against which all others were measured, the boat that proved aggressive tactics and bold leadership could dominate enemy waters. Her final patrol would sink more tonnage than most submarines sank in their entire careers, and she would be destroyed not by depth charges or enemy torpedoes, but by a malfunctioning gyroscope in a weapon her own crew had fired. If you want to see how America's deadliest submarine was destroyed by the weapons she was designed to fire, hit that like button. It helps us share these stories of courage and tragedy at sea. Subscribe if you haven't already, because we're diving deep into submarine warfare where every patrol could be your last. Back to October 1944 and the patrol that should have been legendary for different reasons. Richard Hetherington O'Kane was born on February 1911 in Dover, New Hampshire, to a family with no particular naval tradition. His father worked in education, his mother managed the household. Young Richard showed early aptitude for mathematics and mechanical systems, understanding how things worked by taking them apart and reassembling them. He attended Phillips Exeter Academy, one of America's premier preparatory schools, graduating in 1930 with strong grades in mathematics and physics. He received appointment to the United States Naval Academy at Annapolis, entering with the class of 1934. The academy during the early 1930s emphasized battleship warfare and surface combat. Submarines were considered supporting vessels, useful for reconnaissance and harbor defense, but not decisive weapons. O'Kane absorbed the instruction but questioned the emphasis. He believed submarines, properly employed, could strangle enemy commerce and isolate island nations like Japan. He graduated in June 1934, ranked in the top third of his class, receiving commission as ensign. The Navy assigned him to surface vessels initially, standard procedure for new officers. He served aboard destroyers and cruisers, learning ship handling and naval tactics. but he requested submarine duty in 1938, volunteering for the rigorous submarine school at New London, Connecticut. Submarine school tested officers physically and psychologically. The washout rate exceeded 30%. Candidates who showed claustrophobia, inability to handle stress, or poor mechanical aptitude were eliminated. O'Kane excelled, particularly in the tactical employment courses that simulated combat patrols. He understood that submarines survived through stealth and died through carelessness. His instructors noted his aggressive tactical instincts tempered by meticulous attention to detail. He received assignment to USS Argonaut in 1938, then to USS Wahoo in 1942 as executive officer under Commander Dudley Morton. The Wahoo patrols from 1942 through 1943 established both Morton and O'Kane as aggressive, successful submarine warriors. Wahoo pioneered tactics that other submarines would adopt: night surface attacks, penetrating enemy harbors, remaining in patrol areas until ammunition was exhausted. O'Kane served as Morton's tactical advisor, calculating firing solutions and managing the approach phase of attacks. During 5 patrols aboard Wahoo, O'Kane participated in sinking 19 enemy ships. He learned that successful submarine combat required patience to reach favorable attack positions, combined with decisiveness once the moment arrived. He learned that Japanese anti-submarine forces were less effective than feared, that enemy convoys often operated with inadequate escorts, that aggressive submarines could dominate their patrol areas through psychological impact on enemy commanders who diverted shipping around known submarine operating areas. He also learned the cost of submarine warfare. Wahoo was lost with all hands on her 7th war patrol in October 1943, sunk in the La Perouse Strait between Hokkaido and Sakhalin. Morton and 79 crew members died. O'Kane, who had rotated to new construction duty before that patrol, survived to command his own boat. The Navy assigned O'Kane to command USS Tang, a new Balao-class submarine, completing construction at Mare Island Naval Shipyard in California. Tang was commissioned on October 15, 1943, with O'Kane as commanding officer. He had 1 month to train his crew before their first war patrol. Technical specifications of Tang represented the most advanced submarine design America had produced. Balao-class submarines were improved versions of the Gyro class, incorporating lessons learned from 2 years of Pacific combat. Length overall, 311 feet 9 inches. Beam, 27 feet 3 inches. Displacement surfaced, 1,426 tons. Displacement submerged, 2,424 tons. The additional displacement when submerged came from flooding ballast tanks that gave the submarine negative buoyancy. Propulsion system consisted of 4 Fairbanks Morse diesel engines producing 5,400 horsepower total, driving 4 main generators that either powered electric motors for propulsion or charged massive storage batteries. Surface speed, 20.25 knots. Submerged speed on batteries, 8.75 knots. Range on surface, 11,000 nautical miles at 10 knots. Submerged endurance on batteries, approximately 48 hours at 2 knots before battery depletion, required surfacing to recharge. Diving depth, officially rated at 400 feet, though O'Kane would exceed that specification multiple times during combat. The pressure hull was constructed of high tensile steel, capable of withstanding external pressure of approximately 200 pounds per square inch. At 400 feet depth, water pressure exerted approximately 173 pounds per square inch on the hull. Going deeper risked catastrophic hull failure, instant flooding, and death for the entire crew. Armament consisted of 10 21-inch torpedo tubes, 6 forward and 4 aft, with 14 additional torpedoes stored for reloading. Total torpedo capacity, 24 weapons. Additionally, Tang carried 1 5-inch deck gun, 1 40mm Bofors anti-aircraft gun, and 1 20mm Oerlikon anti-aircraft gun for surface engagement. The torpedoes were Mark 14 steam torpedoes, 20 feet 6 inches long, 21 inches in diameter, weighing 3,280 pounds, including a 600-pound Torpex warhead. Propulsion was provided by a steam turbine powered by burning alcohol with compressed air and water, producing no exhaust wake. Speed settings range from 31 knots for maximum range to 46 knots for minimum time to target. Maximum range at slow speed, approximately 9,000 yards. Range at high speed, approximately 4,500 yards. The Mark 14 torpedo had been plagued by problems since the war began. The magnetic influence exploder, designed to detonate beneath enemy ships for maximum damage, frequently malfunctioned, exploding prematurely or not exploding at all. The depth control mechanism ran approximately 10 feet deeper than set, causing torpedoes to pass under shallow draft vessels. The contact exploder, designed as backup to the magnetic system, often failed to detonate when striking targets at oblique angles. By late 1944, most of these problems had been corrected through field modifications that submarine commanders implemented despite Bureau of Ordnance objections. Magnetic exploders were deactivated. Depth settings were corrected. Contact exploder firing pins were strengthened. But the gyroscope problem, the tendency for torpedoes to circle back toward their launch point if the gyro jammed, remained. Bureau of Ordnance insisted the failure rate was acceptable, that 2% circular runs were statistically insignificant compared to combat effectiveness. Tang departed Pearl Harbor on January 22, 1944, for her first war patrol. The patrol area assigned was the Caroline and Mariana Islands, approximately 3,000 miles from Hawaii. O'Kane drove his crew hard during the transit, conducting countless drills on torpedo approaches, crash dives, emergency surfacing, damage control. His tactical philosophy emphasized speed and aggression. Submarines that hesitated died. Submarines that struck hard and withdrew quickly survived. He developed specific standards that Tang's crew had to meet before entering combat waters. Crash dive time from full surface speed to periscope depth had to be under 60 seconds. Battle stations had to be manned in 45 seconds from any condition of readiness. Torpedo fire control solutions had to be calculated within 90 seconds of initial target contact. These standards exceeded Navy requirements, but O'Kane insisted on them. The first patrol established Tang's reputation. On February 17, 1944, Tang made first contact with enemy shipping, a small convoy consisting of 2 freighters and escort vessels. O'Kane tracked the convoy for 4 hours, plotting its course, calculating speeds, identifying the best attack position. At 1:17 p.m., he fired 4 torpedoes at the leading freighter from 1,500 yards. 3 hit, sinking the 6,800-ton Gyoten Maru in under 4 minutes. Tang went deep immediately, rigged for depth charging. The escort dropped 5 charges, but none came close. O'Kane understood that Japanese anti-submarine doctrine emphasized area saturation rather than precision targeting. Submarines that moved immediately after attacking were rarely hit. On February 22nd, Tang attacked another convoy during night conditions, firing 4 torpedoes at the 3,600-ton Fukuyama Maru. The target disintegrated from hits spanning bow to stern. The next morning, Tang attacked the same convoy again, firing 4 more torpedoes at the 6,800-ton Yamashimo Maru. 3 hits produced catastrophic secondary explosions as cargo detonated. The ship twisted, lifted from the water, and sank burning. Tang submerged to 400 feet to evade depth charge attacks, exceeding her rated depth but suffering no damage. O'Kane noted that the Balao-class submarines could handle deeper depths than specifications indicated, useful knowledge for future evasions. The first patrol concluded with 5 ships sunk totaling 22,000 tons. More importantly, O'Kane had demonstrated tactics that maximized effectiveness while minimizing risk. He proved that aggressive submarines could dominate patrol areas through psychological impact. Japanese convoy commanders who knew American submarines operated in their waters became cautious, diverted shipping, delayed departures. That caution gave submarines strategic effect beyond actual ships sunk. The second patrol, March 16th through April 24th, 1944, was even more successful. Tang operated in the waters around Truk, Japan's major forward base in the Central Pacific. O'Kane sank 4 ships totaling 19,000 tons and rescued 22 downed American aviators from the water after carrier airstrikes. The aviator rescues required Tang to operate close to Japanese-held islands during daylight, exposing the submarine to air attack. O'Kane considered the risk acceptable. American aircrew lives were worth the exposure. The 3rd Patrol, June 8 through July 3, 1944, added 6 ships totaling 26,000 tons to Tang's score. O'Kane pioneered the tactic of attacking convoys from within the formation, surfacing among merchant ships at night and firing torpedoes at point-blank range before enemy escorts could react. The tactic was dangerous but devastatingly effective. Enemy escorts couldn't depth-charge targets within their own convoy without damaging their own ships. The 4th Patrol, July 31st through September 10, 1944, brought Tang's total to 21 ships sunk. O'Kane received orders to patrol the East China Sea and Yellow Sea, waters close to Japanese home islands where enemy anti-submarine forces were strongest. Tang sank 4 ships during this patrol and damaged several others. O'Kane brought Tang home to Pearl Harbor on September 10th, with empty torpedo racks and a crew exhausted from constant combat. During the refit period at Pearl Harbor, O'Kane received the Navy Cross for his first 3 patrols, with recommendation for Medal of Honor pending for the 4th Patrol. Tang received 2 Presidential Unit citations, one of only 2 submarines so honored during the war. The crew received rest, the boat received maintenance, and preparations began for the 5th War Patrol. The 5th Patrol would be Tang's last. The orders sent Tang to the Formosa Strait, the waters between Taiwan and mainland China. Intelligence indicated heavy Japanese shipping traffic through the strait as Japan attempted to reinforce Philippines garrisons before the expected American invasion. Tang would have unlimited targets. O'Kane selected patrol area carefully, studying shipping routes and analyzing Japanese convoy patterns. He planned to position Tang at a choke point where convoys would be forced to pass within torpedo range. Tang departed Pearl Harbor on September 24, 1944. The transit to the patrol area took 12 days, arriving off the coast of Formosa on October 6th. For the next 17 days, Tang operated in the strait, sinking isolated merchant ships and damaging several others. By October 23rd, Tang had fired 20 torpedoes, achieving 15 hits and sinking or damaging 8 ships. O'Kane had 4 torpedoes remaining, 2 in forward tubes and 2 in aft tubes. October 23, 1944, at 8:42 p.m., Tang's radar detected a large convoy approaching from the south. The radar plot showed multiple large ships with escorts. O'Kane calculated convoy speed at 9 knots, course approximately 45 degrees toward the China coast. Weather conditions were excellent for night surface attack. Dark night with no moon, moderate seas, good visibility. O'Kane positioned Tang ahead of the convoy's track, planning to attack from periscope depth as the convoy passed. But as he studied the tactical situation, he made a bold decision. He would surface and attack from within the convoy formation, firing at multiple targets before withdrawing at high speed. The tactic had worked on previous patrols. Tonight, it would work again. At 10:17 p.m., Tang surfaced 4,000 yards from the convoy's track. O'Kane ordered flank speed, 20 knots, and turned Tang toward the convoy. The submarine closed rapidly, approaching the formation from the dark side, invisible against the night sky. At 10:34 p.m., range to nearest target was 1,500 yards. O'Kane ordered the attack. Tang fired 2 torpedoes from the forward tubes at a large transport. Both weapons ran hot, straight, and normal. At 9,500 yards, running time was approximately 45 seconds. O'Kane watched through binoculars as both torpedoes struck the transport amidships. The explosions lit up the night, and the transport began settling immediately, lists developing to port. The ship was doomed. Tang turned hard left, presenting stern tubes to another target, a tanker estimated at 10,000 tons. O'Kane fired the 2 remaining stern torpedoes at 11:03 p.m. Both hit the tanker, which erupted in flames as aviation fuel cargo ignited. The tanker became a beacon, illuminating the entire convoy and revealing Tang's position to enemy escorts. 2 Japanese destroyers turned toward Tang, their searchlights sweeping the water. O'Kane ordered full speed and turned Tang away from the escorts, opening range rapidly. At 20 knots surface speed, Tang could outrun the destroyers if she maintained her head start. But O'Kane still had 20 torpedoes remaining in the torpedo rooms, needing to be loaded into the tubes. Withdrawing now meant ending the attack with most of Tang's weapons unfired. He made the decision to reload while evading. The crew worked frantically in the forward and after torpedo rooms, manhandling the 3,680-pound weapons from storage racks to the tubes, a procedure normally requiring 30 minutes per tube. They completed the reload in 22 minutes, a testament to training and motivation. By 11:47 p.m., Tang had 4 torpedoes ready in forward tubes. O'Kane turned Tang back toward the convoy. The enemy escorts had lost contact during the withdrawal. The burning tanker still illuminated the area, making it easy to locate remaining targets. At 11:58 p.m., Tang fired 2 torpedoes at a freighter, scoring 1 hit that stopped the ship. At 12:14 a.m. on October 24th, Tang fired her remaining 2 forward torpedoes at another transport, achieving 2 hits that sank the ship in 6 minutes. By 12:30 a.m., Tang had fired 20 torpedoes and had 4 remaining, 2 forward and 2 aft, still needing to be loaded from storage. O'Kane decided to continue the attack. The convoy was in disarray, ships scattering in multiple directions, escorts confused by the chaos. Tang could complete her patrol with a perfect record. Every torpedo fired, every weapon finding targets. The reload procedure began again. By 1:47 a.m., 2 torpedoes were loaded in forward tubes. O'Kane identified 2 remaining targets, a transport and a freighter, sailing together approximately 3,000 yards distant. He maneuvered Tang into attack position and fired both torpedoes at 2:03 a.m. 1 torpedo hit the transport, the other missed. 1 torpedo remained in Tang's arsenal, stored in the forward torpedo room, waiting to be loaded. The crew loaded the final torpedo into tube number 3. The process took 18 minutes. By 2:29 a.m., Tang was ready for her final shot. O'Kane identified the target, a transport estimated at 6,600 tons, range 1,000 yards. He ordered final bearing check, final range check, final depth setting. Everything was perfect. At 2:30 a.m., he ordered fire. The torpedo left the tube. Everyone on the bridge watched it run. The weather was clear, visibility good, and the torpedo's wake was visible on the dark water. For 300 yards, the weapon ran perfectly. Then it porpoised, leaping from the water and re-entering with a splash visible from Tang's bridge. When it re-entered the water, something had changed. The torpedo's track began curving left instead of continuing straight. Quartermaster, First Class Sidney Jones, standing on the bridge next to O'Kane, saw it first. "Captain, the torpedo is turning. It's coming back." O'Kane looked and saw the curved wake, recognized immediately what had happened. Circular run. The gyro had failed. The torpedo was turning in a tight circle, heading back toward Tang. He had perhaps 20 seconds to react. Tang was on the surface conducting a night attack. Enemy destroyers were within 4,000 yards. Standard procedure, crash dive and evade, would take 45 seconds to get under, longer than he had. He ordered emergency turn to starboard, full rudder, attempting to turn Tang perpendicular to the torpedo's track to present minimal target. Tang's rudder went over hard. The submarine began turning, but submarines, even on the surface, turn slowly. Tang's turning radius at 20 knots was approximately 500 yards. The torpedo was 600 yards away and closing at 46 knots, covering 76 feet per second. Simple mathematics said the torpedo would reach Tang before she completed her turn. Motor machinist's mate. Second-class Clayton Decker was in the control room below the bridge when the alarm sounded. He heard O'Kane's voice on the intercom, urgent but controlled. "All hands brace for impact. We're going to be hit." Decker grabbed a handhold and braced himself. 8 seconds later, the torpedo struck. The explosion occurred at 2:31 a.m., forward of the after torpedo room on the port side. The warhead contained 600 pounds of Torpex explosive, more powerful than TNT. The detonation breached the pressure hull, creating a hole approximately 20 feet in diameter. Water rushed in at catastrophic rate. The after torpedo room flooded in seconds. The after engine room began flooding immediately afterward. Tang's stern sank first, the bow rising as the stern filled with water. Men in the after compartments died instantly, either from the explosion itself or from drowning in the sudden flooding. Men in the forward compartments had minutes to react. The control room crew scrambled to escape through hatches leading up to the conning tower and bridge. But water rushing through the control room hatch from flooded aft compartments created a waterfall that knocked men down, injured them, blocked their escape route. O'Kane and 8 other men were on the bridge when the torpedo struck. The explosion threw them around the bridge cockpit. Lieutenant Larry Savadkin, the officer of the deck, was thrown over the side into the water. O'Kane grabbed the bridge railing and held on as Tang's bow rose at increasingly steep angle. He could see men in the water, hear them shouting. He could hear sounds from inside the submarine, men trapped in flooding compartments, banging on bulkheads trying to escape. Tang's bow rose to approximately 40 degrees above horizontal before she began sliding backward. The submarine sank stern first, her bow pointed toward the sky like a tombstone. At 2:33 a.m., 2 minutes after the torpedo hit, Tang's bow disappeared beneath the surface. Depth at that location was 180 feet. Tang settled on the bottom with her hull intact but flooded from the explosion point aft. The forward compartments, the forward torpedo room, and the control room were still partially intact, still containing air, still containing living men. 30 men survived the sinking, trapped in flooded or flooding compartments. In the control room, 13 men assessed their situation. The compartment was flooding from aft, water already waist-deep and rising. The hatch above them, leading to the conning tower, was jammed shut. The only escape route was through the forward torpedo room hatch, then up through the forward torpedo room escape trunk. The escape trunk was designed for exactly this emergency. A small cylindrical chamber, approximately 4 feet in diameter and 8 feet tall, with hatches at bottom and top. Men could enter the chamber through the bottom hatch, close it, flood the chamber to equalize pressure with outside water, open the top hatch, and swim to the surface wearing Momsen lungs, emergency breathing devices that provided oxygen for ascent. The Momsen lung was a rubber breathing bag worn on the chest, connected to a canister containing soda lime to absorb exhaled carbon dioxide. The device allowed breathing underwater for approximately 30 minutes under ideal conditions. In combat conditions, with injured men, cold water, and 180 feet of ascent required, the device's reliability was uncertain. It had never been used in actual submarine escape before. Chief Electrician's mate William Leibold took charge of the escape attempt. Water in the control room was now chest deep. Men were panicking, struggling to reach the escape trunk, fighting each other for position. Leibold shouted them into order, organized them into a sequence, explained the escape procedure. 1 man at a time would enter the escape trunk through the bottom hatch, close the hatch, flood the chamber, open the top hatch, and swim to the surface. The process would take approximately 3 minutes per man. With 13 men, total time would be 40 minutes. They had water for perhaps 20 minutes before the control room flooded completely. Leibold decided 4 men would go first, testing the procedure before the water rose higher. Chief Torpedo Man's mate, Floyd Caverly, volunteered to go first. He put on a Momsen lung, checked the canister, checked the breathing bag, and entered the escape trunk at 2:51 a.m. He closed the lower hatch, opened the flood valve, felt water rush into the chamber. As pressure equalized, his ears hurt from compression. He swallowed repeatedly, equalizing pressure in his middle ear. When the chamber was completely flooded, he opened the top hatch and kicked upward, ascending through 180 feet of dark water. The ascent took approximately 2 minutes. Caverly breathed from the Momsen lung, exhaling slowly to prevent lung expansion rupture. At 100 feet depth, his lung began to hurt from expanding air. At 50 feet, he was breathing rapidly, consuming oxygen faster than the soda lime could absorb carbon dioxide. His head began spinning from carbon dioxide buildup. At 20 feet, he was nearly unconscious. He broke the surface at 2:54 a.m., gasping for air, struggling to stay afloat. Behind him came motor machinist's mate Clayton Decker, electrician's mate Hayes Trucca, and radio man William Lair. All 4 men reached the surface alive. But the process had taken 12 minutes, 3 minutes per man, exactly as Leibold had calculated. 9 men remained in the control room. Water was now shoulder deep. Time was running out. The next 4 men entered the escape trunk at 3:03 a.m. Lieutenant Junior Grade Lawrence Savadkin, who had been thrown from the bridge and swum back to the submarine, motor machinist's mate Gordon Cox, fire controlman Desmond Dunleavy, and gunner's mate Paul Larson. All 4 made successful ascents, reaching the surface between 3:15 and 3:18 a.m. 5 men remained in the control room. Water was now neck-deep. Chief Leibold organized the final group, himself, pharmacist's mate Delbert Kimmerer, electrician's mate Jesse De Silva, chief boatswain's mate Walter Parker, and motor machinist's mate Pete Narawansky. They entered the escape trunk at 3:21 a.m., but something went wrong with the escape procedure. The top hatch jammed partially open, preventing proper flooding of the chamber. The 5 men struggled to fix it in darkness and rising water. On the surface, 8 men were now in the water, struggling to stay afloat in moderate seas. They could see Japanese destroyer searchlights sweeping the area. They could see burning ships from Tang's attack. They were approximately 25 miles from the Chinese coast, too far to swim. Their only hope was rescue, either by the Japanese or by American submarines that might be operating in the area. At 3:28 a.m., 17 men were still trapped inside Tang. The 5 men in the escape trunk continued struggling with the jammed hatch. The water in the control room was now above head level, drowning the remaining 12 men who hadn't reached the escape trunk. Inside the forward torpedo room, 14 men waited for their turn at the escape trunk, not knowing the trunk was jammed, not knowing the men inside were trapped. The Japanese destroyer Chiyoda Maru approached the scene at 3:47 a.m., sweeping the water with searchlights, looking for survivors from the ships Tang had sunk. The searchlights found 8 men in the water: Commander O'Kane, Lieutenant Savadkin, Chief Caverly, and 5 enlisted men. The destroyer launched a boat and recovered all 8 survivors. As they were pulled from the water, badly injured, hypothermic, and exhausted, they watched Tang's last bubbles rising from 180 feet below. The 5 men trapped in the escape trunk never escaped. The 12 men trapped in the control room drowned. The 14 men trapped in the forward torpedo room, unable to reach the escape trunk, also drowned as water flooded forward from the control room. Total dead, 78 men. Total survivors, 9, all recovered by the Japanese and made prisoners of war. The Japanese interrogated the survivors aboard Chiyoda Maru, then transferred them to a transport ship that took them to Formosa. The interrogation was brutal and focused on extracting tactical information about American submarine operations. The Japanese wanted to know patrol patterns, communication procedures, torpedo tactics, and intelligence networks. O'Kane refused to provide information beyond name, rank, and service number, as required by Geneva Convention. His resistance earned him severe beatings. On the journey to Formosa, the survivors were beaten repeatedly by guards and crew members. The Japanese were angry, having lost 13 ships to Tang over 2 days of attacks. They considered O'Kane a war criminal, responsible for killing hundreds of Japanese sailors and merchant seamen. The destroyer captain told O'Kane he would be executed after interrogation in Tokyo. O'Kane believed the threat was genuine. The transport ship carrying the Tang survivors arrived in Keelung, Taiwan on October 29, 1944. The prisoners were marched through the city to a military prison beaten by civilians along the route. At the prison, they were placed in individual cells measuring approximately 6 feet by 8 feet, with no furniture except a wooden sleeping platform. Food consisted of 2 small bowls of rice daily, occasionally supplemented with thin soup containing vegetable scraps. Water was provided once daily, in amounts sufficient only for drinking, not washing. The interrogations at the Taiwan facility continued for 3 weeks. Japanese intelligence officers wanted detailed information about American submarine technology, particularly radar and sonar systems. They used beatings, stress positions, and threats of execution to pressure the prisoners into cooperation. O'Kane and his crew maintained their resistance, providing no information beyond what Geneva Convention required. The interrogators became increasingly frustrated. On November 20, 1944, Allied airstrikes on Taiwan forced evacuation of the prison. The Tang survivors were loaded onto a freighter bound for Japan, arriving in Yokohama on November 28th. From there, they were transported to Ofuna, an interrogation center approximately 20 miles south of Tokyo. Ofuna was not a standard POW camp. It was operated by Japanese naval intelligence specifically for interrogating captured air crew and submarine personnel. Prisoners at Ofuna had no connection to the International Red Cross, received no mail, and officially did not exist. If they died during interrogation, there would be no record. Conditions at Ofuna were deliberately harsh to break prisoners' resistance. The 9 Tang survivors were placed in individual cells measuring 5 feet by 7 feet. Each cell had a wooden sleeping platform, a bucket for waste, and nothing else. No blankets were provided despite winter temperatures that frequently dropped below freezing. Food consisted of 2 meals daily, each comprising a small ball of rice and occasional thin soup. Total daily caloric intake was approximately 800 calories, insufficient to maintain body weight or health. The interrogation regime at Ofuna was systematic and brutal. Prisoners were awakened at 5 a.m., given 15 minutes for toilet use and washing, then required to sit in formal kneeling position in their cells until evening. Any movement from the required position resulted in immediate beating. Guards patrolled constantly, looking for prisoners who relaxed their posture or closed their eyes. Beatings were administered with fists, wooden clubs, and occasionally rifle butts. O'Kane estimated he was beaten an average of 3 times daily during his first 3 months at Ofuna. Interrogations occurred irregularly, sometimes daily, sometimes with weeks between sessions. Japanese intelligence officers focused on submarine tactics, asking detailed questions about approach procedures, periscope use, radar employment, and communication protocols. O'Kane continued refusing to provide information. His resistance resulted in severe beatings during and after interrogation sessions. By January 1945, O'Kane had lost 37 pounds from his pre-capture weight of 165 pounds. His teeth were loosening from scurvy. He had developed beriberi, causing his legs to swell and his muscles to weaken. The other Tang survivors suffered similarly. Motor machinist's mate, Clayton Decker, developed dysentery that lasted 6 weeks, nearly killing him. Chief Torpedo Man's mate, Floyd Caverly, suffered 3 broken ribs from a beating in December 1944. The ribs healed improperly, causing chronic pain for the remainder of his life. Lieutenant Lawrence Savadkin developed pneumonia in January 1945, spending 3 weeks in the camp's minimal medical facility, where treatment consisted of rest and slightly increased food rations. By February 1945, the Tang survivors' condition had deteriorated severely. All 9 men were suffering from malnutrition, scurvy, and beriberi. Several had broken bones that healed improperly from beatings. Their combined weight loss exceeded 300 pounds. They were weak, ill, and barely able to maintain the required kneeling position during daily cell confinement. Japanese guards began expressing concern that the prisoners would die before providing useful intelligence information. In February 1945, the survivors were transferred to Omori Camp, a POW facility located on an island in Tokyo Bay. Omori held approximately 600 Allied prisoners, mostly aircrew shot down over Japan and merchant seamen from ships sunk in Japanese waters. The conditions improved marginally compared to Ofuna. Prisoners slept in barracks rather than cells, received slightly more food, and were not beaten as frequently. The Tang survivors could interact with other prisoners, breaking months of solitary confinement. At Omori, the Tang survivors were joined by other famous prisoners, including Marine Corps aviator Gregory "Pappy" Boyington, who had been shot down over Rabaul in January 1944 and held at Ofuna before transfer to Omori. Boyington and O'Kane were assigned to the same work detail, allowing them to talk during labor periods. They shared experiences, compared treatment at different camps, and maintained morale through mutual support. Boyington later said, O'Kane was the toughest man he'd ever met, having survived interrogation and beatings that would have broken most men. Food at Omori remained inadequate, but improved compared to Ofuna. Prisoners received 3 meals daily, each consisting of rice, occasional vegetables, and rarely small amounts of fish or meat. Total caloric intake was approximately 1,200 calories daily, still insufficient for men performing heavy labor. The prisoners supplemented their diet when possible by stealing food from Japanese supplies or catching rats that infested the barracks. Everything edible was consumed. The prisoners could see and hear American B-29 bombers attacking Tokyo daily, starting in March 1945. The raids grew in intensity through spring and summer 1945. On the night of March 10, 1945, the most destructive air raid of the war occurred when 334 B-29s dropped incendiary bombs on Tokyo, creating a firestorm that killed approximately 100,000 civilians. The prisoners at Omori, 10 miles from the city center, could see the flames and feel the heat. Some guards became angry, beating prisoners in retaliation for the bombing. Other guards became fatalistic, recognizing that Japan was losing the war. On August 15, 1945, Japan surrendered. On September 2nd, the formal surrender ceremony occurred aboard USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay. On September 6th, American forces liberated Omori Camp. The Tang survivors had been prisoners for 10 months and 13 days. All 9 survived to return home. Commander O'Kane was awarded the Medal of Honor on March 27, 1946, presented by President Harry Truman at the White House. The citation covered Tang's 4th and 5th war patrols, noting O'Kane's exceptional tactical skill and aggressive leadership. The citation did not mention the circular run torpedo that sank Tang. That detail remained classified for years. Tang was awarded 2 Presidential Unit citations, making her one of only 2 submarines so honored during World War II. Her combat record stood as the most successful of any American submarine. 33 ships sunk, totaling 116,154 tons. Her 5th war patrol alone accounted for 13 ships, more than most submarines sank in entire careers. The circular run torpedo that sank Tang was investigated after the war. Bureau of Ordnance engineers determined that the gyroscope in the torpedo had jammed due to a manufacturing defect, causing the rudder to lock in hard left position. The failure was random, unpredictable, and unavoidable with existing technology. The Bureau calculated that approximately 2% of all torpedoes fired during the war experienced circular runs. Tang simply had the misfortune of being hit by her own weapon. The investigation recommended improved gyroscope design for future torpedoes and installation of self-destruct mechanisms that would detonate the warhead if the torpedo turned more than 90 degrees from its initial course. These recommendations were implemented in post-war torpedo designs, but for Tang's crew, the improvements came too late. Richard O'Kane retired from the Navy in 1957 with the rank of Rear Admiral. He wrote a memoir, Clear the Bridge, published in 1977, describing Tang's war patrols in detail. He remained active in submarine veterans organizations, attending reunions and speaking about submarine warfare. He died on February 16, 1994, at age 83. He was buried at Arlington National Cemetery with full military honors. The 8 other survivors of Tang lived full lives after the war, grateful to be alive, forever bonded by their shared experience of escape from a sunken submarine. Clayton Decker, the motor machinist's mate, who survived both the sinking and 10 months as POW, lived until 2009, dying at age 89. He gave numerous interviews about the sinking, always emphasizing that Tang's loss wasn't failure, but rather the random tragedy of warfare. USS Tang's wreck remains on the bottom of the Formosa Strait, 180 feet down, a war grave containing 78 American sailors. The wreck has never been located or surveyed. It sits in international waters that are now heavily traveled by commercial shipping between China and Taiwan. The exact coordinates of the sinking were classified until 1987, and even now, the precise location is uncertain due to navigational errors in wartime position reports. Modern submarine forces study Tang's patrols as examples of aggressive tactics and effective command. The U.S. Navy has commissioned 2 ships named Tang since World War II. USS Tang, SS-563, a post-war diesel submarine that served from 1952 to 1980, and USS Tang, SSN-805, a Virginia-class nuclear submarine currently under construction with expected commissioning in 2027. The legacy of Tang is complex. She was the most successful American submarine, proof that aggressive tactics and skilled command could dominate enemy waters. Her commander received the Medal of Honor, her crew received 2 Presidential Unit citations, and her combat record stood as the standard against which all other submarines were measured. But she was also destroyed by her own weapon, victim of a mechanical failure that killed 78 men who had survived dozens of depth charge attacks and anti-submarine patrols. October 25, 1944, lasted 18 minutes from the moment the torpedo struck until Tang disappeared beneath the surface. One submarine, one malfunctioning torpedo, one circular run that ended the most successful submarine patrol in American history. When the Deadliest became the victim, when the weapon became the enemy, when mechanical failure defeated tactical excellence. USS Tang, commissioned October 15, 1943, conducted 5 war patrols, sank 33 enemy ships totaling 116,454 tons, received 2 Presidential Unit citations, rescued 22 downed aviators, sunk by her own torpedo on October 25, 1944, 78 men killed, 9 survived. Commander Richard O'Kane awarded Medal of Honor, not because she failed, because sometimes excellence isn't enough against random chance. If this story moved you, please like and subscribe. Your support preserves these histories of courage and tragedy at sea. Tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? We honor both the victories and the losses, because that's the complete truth of war. Thank you for keeping their stories alive.